April 521. A good year for Swamp Island. Where previously, a couple rounds fighting, feuding. Generally add into the territory. Tech is making its way along. And here now, we had the chance to push this button. Why are you visible? If it were any reason, it would presumably be if I can still
Your gold is always welcome
find them
here.
lurking around. The Great Druid Zoroaster. There was that Armenian prince who managed to somehow flee all the way to Gaul. And it settled in. Yeah, Parisi here. Yeah, Rusa is Zoroastrian. So I guess even though none of the populace is a character of the religion, just being present is enough to get that button visible. Weird. So we're going through a round of thinking about next fight. Next fight was going to be invading Baturkia. For which we will not be able to call on the Bohems. They're a ways off in Bohemia. Would involve going against quite a few lads. Mostly from Baturgia and Arvernia. Bit of a rough move diving in there. And it's years off until the next council. The previous council was what settled that Baturgia should be a target. Question is, how we'll accomplish that? Nearly have all the development that we need, which means we will have all the development we need by the time we're Tech 6 across the board. You have, hey, other big societies. Yeah, they're rocking Tech 5, Tech 3 in Carthage, 6 and 7 in Macedonia. So we're doing all right in terms of the science. Because the only thing governing the science is how many citizens you keep around, and there's only really a pretty mild penalty to citizen happiness among us. Yeah, Rusa. Does your strange furnace god teach you how to fight? You got any fighting styles? How many of the people of your homeland could defeat this Zoroaster one-on-one in the ring? All the government reforms are on schedule. Looking for continued easy targets. Can swoop in on. Kenya is not Troost. Although their remaining territory is outside of Gallicus. That would involve creating another governor? Our remaining other target is Yubervichia here. We'll also possess several allies. It would help if another regional power would emerge anywhere in our vicinity. Viscounty is looking pretty tough. Are you... You are regional. You dislike us for other independent reasons. Understandable. Slightly more manpower. Always valuable. Yeah, we're up over 3K a year now. Things have definitely recalibrated towards a much better level of, like, cash and bodies are scarce, but not cripplingly scarce. Have enough numbers that you can toy around. Right, Cicania, we split them. They also have this land over here that I want to take off them. An invasion there would be proper. They extend across the Alps. Into the Alps. We are mostly hemmed in, though. These defensive alliances is large enough. attacking in any direction would be a bad idea for now. Province loyalty is slowly improving in the core and, irrelevant in the periphery. Assimilation is going well. In fact, it's kind of run its course over here. We got enough development going around that where we have citizens, they are reasonably happy. Our cities are okay, and we can start thinking of condensing our tribesmen down into settled populace. The tech is getting there. Our 458 overall population. Comparable in size to Umbria here. Those who umbrage. Bonichi, come on. You had your chance, Bonichi. And now we have this office open for somebody else to occupy. But the Panucci family is scorned again as a result of that, but the Panucci family has finally produced a couple of people who are at least mediocre. Someone who's pretty alright at governing and terrible at defending himself in single combat, that sounds ideal for a governor. Yeah, Dibnivalanis. Just sitting about. very slightly losing money. Nice. So with 40 baseline Civ, Lutetia can now achieve the 50 points we need. I'm not sure there's too much else in the tradition tree that I really badly want here. Like, we're gonna get that manpower boost. And then, I'm intrigued as to what the raise levies buttons would do. But it's also behind his chariot buff. Siege ability and plus 10 morale, probably strong. I think after I have the manpower, I will stop thinking of military power as completely reserved for these. Okay, how would he be? Yeah, he's disloyal, but he doesn't own anything anymore. He can't contribute to the bar. Or perhaps he can, just still a tiny bit by existing. Who can say for sure? Two ordinary allies, and then one Defense League partner. Wait, and then what additionally? How does Pictonia enter this? Did they warn us? 3-point of fortress. Not really, not there. We're already spending a lot on forts. We're one, you know, on an active border against an adversary, maybe? Since that's somewhere where we're going to do a lot of fighting. But just comfortably in the center of the current loadout? Not likely, no. Civic Tech in 26, and then again at some point afterward. Yeah, probably the late 30s then. Then we'll have permission for the button. I've just now added Pictomnia as an ally. Though, right, since we now have some tech under our belt, ideas. When do we unlock better ideas? 6. Tech 6 and then Tech 12. We're going to get a different idea set after the government shift. So how does integration even happen in this? What does boosted integration speed even do? Okay, so tributaries never integrate. I went with feudatories instead. Those can integrate. feudatories, satrapies, client states. All of those can be integrated. These folks are only paying protection money, they maintain their borders. At some point after we have more cash to throw around, I could cut them loose and then re-invade them at a later time. Time for waiting. Waiting and watching. So you've picked a fight. Interesting. Funny how these things happen. Go get them. Yeah, all of our allies have joined in their defense. But we're providing a hefty distraction versus their other targets. Let's see, we are now fighting Thuswise. How much is Sicania bringing to this? Only 6 cohorts. They have been really torn up. They are harmless. We could probably turn around and defeat Sicania on its own. Like, yeah, there's pretty much the entire Sicanian army there. Defeat them, take their Alpine territory that we want, then turn back and conduct the rest of the war. And meanwhile, they are against their other adversaries of Celtica and Vecia, who are pretty reasonably armed. Do one little round of besieging here so we can take some captives. Also starting this war with plenty of cash. I may as well go for this. If they're really critically distracted, if they've gone too far into their other fight. This is their main fortress. If I break that, I occupy the entire countryside and then can just kind of rough them up. They still have the one other fort all the way up there. Tributaries might fight to defend my territory during this. Maybe. They seem to be allowed to stay neutral, which is also fine if so. Then they're providing natural barriers. Alright, we'll just flex these mercenaries into service and send them to attack Yubrovichia. Have the cash to sustain them for a while. Alright, we have gained their attention. They resolved their other war. Bring the mercenaries down and try to pick a decisive battle. While the clan troops go around beating up Cicadia. Take some prisoners, raise a ruckus. The mercs might get here in time. Going to be an okay fight until it becomes a rough fight. Though they are many, we are mostly on horse. Ah, they captured Gullus. Terrible. Right, that sure is the entire enemy alliance concentrated into a single dot. We have managed to deal more damage so far. I'd have to occupy so much of Sicania to force them out of the fight. Send the mercenaries down for another round. They might not make it in time, actually. We have some cash problems. So if the mercs get themselves all destroyed in a glorious battle, then we save on Zealot this battle. Fight here, closer. Alright, the clan troops have done their job in Sicania. Mercenaries were defeated. And I will be forced to run out of money because they can't be disbanded until they're done retreating. Kinda need that cash. Not the best looking fight. Or the best looking general situation across the entire border. We have still dealt more damage. They'd apparently taken a lot of prisoners. The hunt goes well. Okay, but there's more than 100 cohorts across the entire opposing force. And there is still only the one autosave. So we'll have to roll back very far to actually undo the entire rest of the session. Yeah, systems and Imperator still have a bit of a case of the bads. And of course the UI continues to be opaque, to be effectual, to constantly refuse to collect useful information and put it in a box to look at. So the state of things is, we can't do anything right now. Because all of the smalls around us get to cheaply form 100-man defensive alliances, and we are not allowed to make any agreements with anything. And we can't adjust our existing tributaries. There's no renegotiating what they are in place. As a republic, we may end up with enough numeric power to scythe our way through one of these alliances. Maybe? Who can say for sure? The problems being encountered here have nothing to do with starting as a small versus starting as a big of any sort. We were over here in ROM. The tier system and its limits on diplomacy would just mean that you ignore diplomacy entirely and proceed off of the fact that you are so huge. You take your sheer weight and just crunch through everyone in your way. The problem is these lines are too sharp, too abrupt, too absolute. We are the largest of the Gallic tribes, meaning we're too important to talk to any other Gallic tribe. And would instead only view, what, Sicily as peers? Why? We don't know anything about Sicily. The principle behind it, if you're way up on the top of the scale, you don't make lateral agreements with the tiny dots scattered out in the periphery. You make lopsided agreements based on yourself being very large and them being very small. From the top of it to the bottom of it, that makes sense. From the bottom of it to one step off the bottom of it, it doesn't make any sense. So now we're being attacked by Arvernia. Are they bringing any allies? In fact, just Arvernia. And only Arvernia daring to challenge me and the boys. If so, that's a war we can deal with very cleanly on the defense. And they have several land that we're looking for. Amazing to think how much Paris is on the wrong side of the border right now. Okay, so instead of all the allies being brought into the war immediately when the war started, they've all manifested spontaneously a month later? That seems wrong. That seems not how this has ever worked. Yeah, so this is the same 100,000 man army we were fighting previously, for which it is impossible for us to respond at all meaningfully. 6 smalls can form an offensive alliance and attack a unsmall, which cannot ever have enough soldiers to defeat 6 smalls. Celtica, how do you work? Celtica. How do you want 123 pops? Have as many soldiers as I do, and a full treasury, and +4 net income. Well, a bunch of them are spending next to nothing on forts. Whereas I have several forts. If I had fewer forts, I would have more cash to turn into soldiers. But then, you know, my big swath of countryside would also be completely unfortified. And vulnerable to all manner of violence. Then again, when you consider supply limits, the amount of army I have is about as much as wants to be moving around in all this terrain. Anything more would start dropping dead of swamp illness. Celtica, where there are fewer people, all of whom are miserable, and there is hardly any development. And whose tech is worse than ours across the board. Still wealthier. And of course, AI troop movements are going to be based on perfect knowledge of everything to do with micromanagement. Carefully looking over all those modifiers, as if any one of them will matter. So the skirmishers, the light cavalry, who are skirmish troops, designated skirmish troops, third line troops, the third of lines. Why are they at the middle of this formation? And all these heavy cavalry are designated shock troops for shocking, sitting on the outer edges, with the archers, the first line, who are supposed to be making first contact with the enemy, skirmishing with them, and then backing off, according to the descriptions of how combat claims to work, standing in between them doing nothing. Here come 30,000 angry gulls, crossing a river into 23,000 mid-tempered gulls. Okay, so why isn't this going to work? Because we're already down a bit of morale? Because otherwise they're crossing a river, and they're not all arriving at the same time, even. Let's see, the first fragment of them just exploded immediately. Because I suppose if you can divine what this stack is actually made of, for being needlessly overcomplicatedly 200 different stacks that have to cooperate. Okay, there's the rest of the army. Our entire center vanished all at once. Goat skirmishers. So as can remain the case indefinitely, combat doesn't work, doesn't even pretend to work any fraction of the way it is described. Yeah, game's haunted. score is in our favor because they have not yet successfully broken into and occupied their target state. We don't get to slide back very far here via the autosave. The one lone autosave, which will always be not far enough back to make much of a change in your situation. Since the 1.1 patch, the console has been disabled by default and must be re-enabled via a launch command. So I was thinking, since tributaries are this weird strict cash-only, cannot be renegotiated thing and are the only tool that I have for interacting with the miners, I was building this ring of tributaries as a defensive measure. Maybe if they were instead feudatory, that would change anything about the situation. Like, let's take a look here. Back at the big old list of all subject states. And what they all do. Feudatories will join wars. They will integrate. For limited diplomacy. Yeah, so I should have been taking feudatories this whole time. So the thought was, okay, I will yes man and cancel and re-offer subject status of all of my my affiliates here of the Parisian League. And then, with the ability to use their soldiers in offensive and defensive wars, these numbers might even out into something sane. But now I see that as they begin this desperate scramble to start, to halt the bleeding and start frantically patching this into a more playable state, they also chose to lock down the definitive tool for hot-fixing anything that's going slightly wrong on the user end at runtime whenever they feel like it. The console exists, the commands exist, they've decided that by default the console should be locked. Outside of, say, Iron Mode or multiplayer, you're in standard mode, fun-having mode, where it's just you on the board. Let's relaunch it. Alright, we've activated the Yes-Men. Although, wait, the cooldowns on diplomatic actions themselves are going to be in the way here. So let's start fresh again. From Swamp Island Chief. Ah, this is going to be obnoxious. This is going to require further shutting down and relaunching. If the console can only be on if you have the general rest of a debug mode on that shows you the data, the DNA. So the Yes Man can't forcibly overrun. What? Yes Man. Yes man does not yes men. Yes men can't override various arbitrary other limiters that can be placed on diplomatic actions. The console command, whose purpose is to let you arbitrarily rearrange diplomatic actions to whatever state you need them to be in, doesn't override diplomacy. The override diplomacy command does not override diplomacy. The console, which, remember, has its origins in being a development side tool to let you snap open and toy with things while working on it, so you can adjust things, calibrate things, and test things. And the console commands are not overriding normal gameplay rules. Don't.